people that had actually assaulted people or had gotten close to it at one of the latest gatherings. And so, can you tell your experience with that if you were at the scene?
I felt like at our event in Lacey, I mean, yes, there were protesters. I don't know if there were too many individuals who felt so intimidated by the protesters that they didn't come in. I did speak to one man who said his wife stayed in the car with their child because she wasn't comfortable bringing their child past the line of protesters. But then, of course, there was an event of people standing within feet of a signature gathering table. There were people holding signs calling them Nazis and fascists and F these guys. To me, that crossed the line from state law. Like, to me, I think that what happened there was in violation of state law when it came to not harassing or intimidating signature gatherers. After that, I wrote a letter to the Secretary of State, just basically saying, hey, it's in the best interest of our democratic process to make sure no one feels harassed or intimidated when they try to participate in this way. I did get a pretty prompt letter back. He said he agreed and offered to have us come down to Olympia and maybe talk about policy issues with them and how can we strengthen laws to make sure that, you know, there's enough distance between somebody collecting signatures and people who want to protest it. So you have to protect First Amendment rights, but you also have to protect people's democratic rights.
So what was your take on the results of Petition R101?
Well, it's disappointing. We came very, very close to getting enough signatures. And in fact, I think it was just kind of a new group of people, and it looked like they were going to have enough signatures about a week out. And I think that kind of gave them a false sense of that they were going to get it. And it turned out they were only short a couple thousand signatures on that one. And if they'd had another week of signature gathering, or had some of the churches get in a little bit earlier, they would have easily been over the top. So it was very close. There is a lesson to be learned there, which is that you don't count your chickens before they hatch. Anybody who runs a farm knows that. And don't presume that just because you're on track and it looks good that you're going to make it. You really want to make sure you get a lot of extra signatures just in case. And with as close as we were on that one, I feel pretty optimistic with the initiatives this year that are due in December. So a lot of people are putting a lot of time into it. It'd be exciting to get some of these issues in front of the voters. I wish R101 had been one of those issues, but for now we have the initiatives. Those are in front of us now, so we'll just keep plunging away.
I kind of suspected from the beginning it was going to be an uphill battle, and we were just volunteering our time to try to get as many signatures as we could. But it was really a grassroots effort. I mean, I feel like there could have been more institutional effort on the part of Republicans to really back it financially. And I don't think you really saw that to the extent that you maybe should have. But it was also a difficult referendum to explain to people. It's not like $30 car tabs where you're like, hey, do you want $30 car tabs? And people say yes or no. You have to sit there and you have to explain what was Senate Bill 5599, which is already complex, and then you have to talk about the referendum process, and you have to talk about what's at stake. So I think it was a harder sell for that reason, because it's not a simple message.
You know, I was covering this from the beginning. I thought it was a valiant effort by Dawn Land and all the volunteers. They were so close, just a few thousand signatures away from actually getting this on the November ballot, so I was extremely impressed. But what I saw happening behind the scenes was absolutely stunning, and what I'm talking about is the far-left activists along with Antifa trying to intimidate these signature gatherers at some of these events. You know, folks, volunteers with Moms for Liberty also dealing with that intimidation. I just could not believe that the leftists, the people who wanted State Representative Mark Elias's bill to go through, were essentially, you know, using any means necessary to stifle this referendum. So that's what was probably one of the most shocking developments to, you know, happen on, you know, covering this story. With that said, I think this is going to be a real lesson learned, especially for Republicans, conservatives, the GOP, especially parents, and that's really trying to better understand and seize the moment with the narrative, really getting their story out, because they can't rely on mainstream media anymore. Very few outlets covered it. I mean, it was pretty much me, Brandi Kruse, and a handful of other folks who really covered this from the beginning, middle, and end. So you can't rely on mainstream media anymore when you have these initiatives, so you really have to really own the story, and you do that by leveraging social media and citizen journalism. So we'll see what Dawn does next, but I spoke to her after this defeat, I think it was, again, a teachable moment, and, we haven't heard the last from the moms and the parents, and I think there are going to be some other bills out there that are going to try to counter this.
It was heartbreaking that we fell just a few thousand signatures short of qualifying Referendum 101 for the November 2023 ballot. I admired the approach that the organizers took. It was all volunteers. It was an all-volunteer effort, and that is admirable, but they just weren't able to get enough traction to get those last 6,000 or 7,000 votes. It's a real heartbreaker, but it's time to pivot. I-2081 does a lot of what Referendum 101 would have done, and it's an initiative, so we have more time, 6 months, to gather signatures for Initiative 2081.
They just started too late. They had 90 days to collect signatures, and they started on the 45th day. You just can't do that. Referendums, initiatives are really hard. Every day that goes by is a lost day, and they just couldn't make up for it. If they had a couple more days, they would have made it.
In one of the signature gathering events, second time around, there was intimidation that occurred. But in state law, it's stipulated that there shouldn't be harassment based off of signature gathering for petitions.
Right.
However, then that could go into initiatives as being different. Should they register as the same, or do you have a different understanding?
Well, the harassment, technically, if you read the state law, signature gathering is a free speech activity as a protected class. And so when it comes to harassment of signature gatherers, that's generally considered illegal anyway. So it doesn't matter whether collecting signatures for a referendum or to recall a politician or to basically to put an initiative on the ballot, it's the same. So any harassment like that is obviously bad and it's illegal. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Obviously, the left harasses people all the time, and they're probably never going to be prosecuted for that in this state. But it's something that you should report and document if you see it happen to you. Any kind of ballot measure, whether it's an initiative or a referendum, anything where the voters are making the decision, the opponents of it go out of their way to harass people who collect signatures. They just do, and it's a bad thing. It's a mean thing. It's really awful, and it is against the law. The question is whether or not they want to make it more illegal, but the reality is it's a tough process. It's a really brutally difficult process, and it would be nicer if people would just respect that some people want to sign a petition and they shouldn't be harassed for signing it. People who are collecting signatures should be left alone. But unfortunately, we live in an era where if you think you're going to lose at the ballot box, you want to make sure the thing doesn't qualify.
State law protects both initiative gatherers, any kind of signature gatherers who are doing a legal referendum or legal initiative, that you cannot harass or intimidate them. I think the challenge is, and where I'd like to see state law improved, is who gets to determine what constitutes intimidation. I think there are some people who might have seen what happened at some of these R101 events and said, yeah, that was intimidating. For me, I might not have signed that if there was a line of protesters holding signs saying you're Nazis. And so I think the best fix for me probably would be to institute some sort of distance. So you have to stay, 75 feet away from a signature gathering table if you're protesting it. And that gives you your First Amendment rights, but it also gives people their rights to be able to sign it free from fear of harassment or intimidation.
The statute is clear. Interfering with any signature gathering is a crime in the state of Washington. And there is no doubt that what some of these radical left activists did at events where the volunteers in support of Referendum 101 were having booths or having activities to gather signatures for the referendum, there is no doubt that the actions of these far-left radicals were illegal. They violated RCW. They were illegal interference with what's really a First Amendment right to collect signatures in support of a referendum or initiative. So there's no question those actions were illegal. There's also no question that those actions hurt the volunteer organization's ability to gather signatures. And the people involved should be ashamed. The people involved should be prosecuted.
When it comes to just basic, bare bones, signature gathering, I mean, and trying to set up a table at a, park, trying to gather signatures from people, that you have protections. Anyone who tries to interfere with that, that's against the law. But I think the key is enforcement. Will local law enforcement, when they see that type of activity or behavior, will they enforce that? Will they protect, the men and women, the volunteers who are trying to get these signatures? Because again, what I saw with the far left activists, they saw SB 5599, the referendum for that, as a genuine threat. And it was so close, and I think if word got out more, if mainstream media even covered what was happening, I think that this would be on the November ballot.